In the sweltering heat of the American South, the name Michael King Jr. was gently reshaped into one destined for greatness. His father, stirred by the story of Martin Luther, embraced the name for both of them. Martin Luther King Jr., as he would be known, embodied the spirit of Reformation his namesake had centuries earlier. This change was more than symbolic. It was a foreshadowing of the transformation he himself would champion. Martin Luther King Jr.'s childhood was steeped in the bitter reality of segregation. A young white friend, once joined in innocent camaraderie, drifted away when society's barriers became insurmountable. King's tender heart faced its brutal awakening to the world's cruelty, a defining moment that planted the seeds for his life's mission. King was not one to shy from conflict. His spirited temper sparked in the face of injustice like flint to steel. Through brawls and confrontations, he learned to channel his outrage into a robust resolve. Yet in his grandmother's embrace, beneath her understanding gaze, he found sanctuary and wisdom. High school debates became King's proving grounds, his compelling oratory, a beacon for those seeking reason and passion intertwined. Each word he uttered seemed to enchant and compel, marking a young Martin Luther King Jr., not merely as a speaker, but as an orator for the ages. When King ventured north to Connecticut's tobacco fields, he tasted true equality for the first time, a world unmarred by the color line. This breath of freedom seared an indelible vision into his mind, a dream that would soon demand life beyond mere imagination. Across continents, the philosophy of nonviolence whispered by Gandhi sailed into King's heart and mind. The principles of love and tolerance etched a blueprint within him, a strategy built not on the might of arms, but on the resolute power of peace. The narrative thus laid out paints Martin Luther King Jr.'s early experience with discrimination and his development into a brilliant orator and nonviolent advocate, setting the stage for what was to become his destiny as a civil rights leader. It was a day like any other, with Martin Luther King Jr. offering his hand to sign a book suddenly pierced by the cold steel of hatred. A woman's blade thrust with intent to silence a voice for the ages. Blood spilled, and his life dangled on a precipice, a stark reminder that his stride towards equality was paved with peril. This assault, perpetrated by one of his own, exposed the multifaceted nature of the struggle, an internal labyrinth of agony. In the grand spectacle of politics, President Kennedy's dance with civil rights was one of caution rather than conviction. King sought an ally, but found a politician measured in commitment, playing chess with human rights. The budding relationship bore signs of strain, as King pushed against the president's reluctance, aiming to transform political expediency into genuine support. Kennedy remained an enigma, dangling approval like a carrot before the fervent civil rights leader. The agony unspooled on the streets of Birmingham for all to witness, a sickening tableau of state-sanctioned brutality. Fire hoses and police dogs became icons of oppression against peaceful protesters' flesh and will. This televised horror thrust the civil rights movement into global consciousness. It stoked public outcry so intense it grabbed President Kennedy by the wrist, pulling him into decisive action. In this crucible, King remained steadfast, a sentinel braving the tempest. The March on Washington represented more than a gathering. It was a spectacle of hope and unity. King's vision interlaced with Kennedy's newly yielding stance, a fusion yielding tangible progress. More than 250,000 souls congregated, shared dreams wafting amidst the historic backdrop. King's oratory pinnacle, "I Have a Dream," wasn't just spoken. It was lived by every attendee, every supporter, carving a promise into the nation's soul. King and Kennedy's alliance was one of guarded pragmatism rather than heartfelt unity. Despite shared public stages, their private exchanges crackled with unspoken discord. King pressing, Kennedy parrying. On voting rights, economic equity, and the velocity of change, their paths diverged. Within this complex ballad, they danced a duet, burdened with the weight of millions of hopes, a dance both intricate and precarious. The tremors of Kennedy's assassination rippled through a nation, touching King with an odd rush of hope. Amidst collective mourning rose a belief that President Johnson could carry forth a torch left at Kennedy's still feet, that unfulfilled promises would at last be kept. As Johnson's presidency unfolded, priorities shifted, lofty goals hanging in limbo. Yet even amidst political turbulence, King's resolve to break every shackle remained undiminished. In the tumultuous 1960s, a new chant rose alongside Martin Luther King Jr.'s calls for nonviolence. The unbridled voice of the Black Power movement, stern and forceful, echoed through America's streets, challenging Dr. King's steadfast creed of peaceful protest. While King understood the anger that fueled such a philosophy, he remained wary. His belief in a society transformed through nonviolence was not easily shaken. Yet the shifting political landscape suggested that the dialogue on civil rights was bracing for change, infiltrated by a younger, impatient generation ready to claim dignity by any means necessary. In an environment fraught with tension and conflicting ideologies, Dr. King's philosophy began to stand in stark contrast to the forceful cry for Black power. Intelligent discourse became overshadowed by simplified media portrayals, confusing public perception and trivializing the complexities inherent within the civil rights movement. Debates intensified not only on the streets, but within the heart of a community seeking both civil empowerment and racial harmony. Dr. King's enduring message of nonviolence aimed to bridge these differences, though he feared the potential for fragmentation. The civil rights movement, though united in its pursuit of justice, was not immune to internal strife, a reality that opponents exploited with surgical precision. As nonviolence stood toe-to-toe with assertiveness, Dr. King played the role of a beleaguered mediator, guiding his fractious flock toward a common dream. The organization he held together braved the tempests of ideological divergences, emerging resilient under King's tested leadership. His unyielding commitment to his principles became the glue that maintained a semblance of cohesion among competing factions. On April 4, 1968, a shot rang out on the balcony of Memphis's Lorraine Motel. Martin Luther King Jr. fell victim to an assassin's hatred, a martyr robbed of life at 39. Dawn broke with a nation in mourning, streets filled with weeping faces, hearts anguished at a dream interrupted. While King had never wavered under the gravest threats, in death he became a symbol indelibly etched into the fabric of history. His assassination amplified his message as waves of grief strengthened resolve among civil rights advocates who now bore his legacy forward with renewed vigor. Though decades have passed since that foreboding day in Memphis, Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream has transcended time, guiding new torchbearers in their own quests for equality. The threads he wove into America's civil tapestry remain strong as new agitators pull from his legacy to confront today's giants. His influence is palpable in every placard raised, voice lifted, and march taken against modern injustices. His ethos now, an eternal testament within the ongoing struggle for civil rights. Our documentary concludes where it began, with a man who transcended his given name to become an enduring symbol of hope and justice. Martin Luther King Jr.'s mission extended far beyond his lifetime and remains as relevant today as it was in those monumental years of change. The belief he instilled, that equality is not only a possibility, but also an inevitability, resounds through generations committed to bending the arc of the moral universe towards justice for all.